Man, I would encourage, like, if you have the ability to let your staff work from home, if your business can run where you don't need the overhead of an office and you don't need all of that stuff, do it.
Moral of the story today, you can create balance. I hate
yeah.
how that's a myth. You can create balance. It just depends on your level of organization and seeing what you want done for the week and how you could squeeze it in the time that you have available. Cheers! And welcome to episode of Fuck Your Podcast. I'm Emma Pardo.
And I'm Katy Martin. What are you drinking today?
Water.
Yeah, me too. This week's episode, creating balance in working and living. And I think this is a good topic, especially for us because we work from home primarily.
Mm-hmm.
So like knowing when to turn it on, knowing when to shut it off, like strategically moving things around so that way we can still get stuff done. And now I think the cool thing that we've been talking about is like how we're going to block days to do certain things, you know,
right,
to kind of like hack the system, you know, where we can batch not only like executing fulfillment work, but now we're talking about strategically doing it to build the business. So it's pretty exciting. But anywho, so, well, I mean, it also is a good topic to bring up today because both of us were like, even though we were super prepped going into I felt really prepared for this week.
So do I. I feel super prepared. I just like can move my stuff around to where I'm like, this doesn't need to get done today.
Right.
And I have other days to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with every like once in a while, like bogging down a day to like knock it out and have a smooth sailing week. This week with Cole being out of town this past weekend and me kind of doing everything at the house, clean, like last night I like deep cleaned everything. I got all the mud from the dogs out of my house just for them to bring it back in this morning. But yeah, getting all the mud out of my house just for it to be brought back in this morning. And then Cole was out of town all weekend for work and he didn't come home until 1 a.m. So I then like woke up and was up for a little bit chit-chatting with him. So then here I am today, extremely tired because I'm usually in bed by 9 p.m. And I was up at 1 a.m. So I'm like, as you can see, I'm like still in pajamas almost.
No, I just couldn't. We had a super productive weekend. So I think the one thing that's like when you work from home, a lot of people used to talk about work-life balance became a buzzword or like a buzz phrase, I guess you would call it, in the 80s when women started entering the workforce in larger numbers than they had in the previous 2 decades. So you didn't really have that in the 50s. Most women stayed home. The 60s, you got a little bit of a hint of that. The 70s, a little bit more, but like the 1980s was like the huge decade that women entered the workforce and completely changed the dynamic of what it was to be like a working parent and having a 2-income household. And a lot of times, I mean, then too, and you had more single moms then. The divorce rate was starting to come up in the 80s because of like that independence.
Right.
And
women were finding their worth.
Yeah. Like the work-life balance became a thing that you had to be able to, spend time at home, get things done at home. And that's still like, you hear a lot of people and I've said this too, like there's not really work-life balance. It's just balance. Like you can set boundaries. You can figure that into your work. So the more, and I guess it's harder when you are working for someone else and you're working at an office or someplace where you can't work remote. But man, I would encourage, like if you have the ability to let your staff work from home, if your business can run where you don't need the overhead of an office and you don't need all of that stuff, do it. Because I've seen people way more productive. And a lot of the people that I've talked to, they can get so much more work done because you don't have to factor in all of the bullshit that people typically have to fight to have work and home life balance because it's unproductive time.
Well, I was going to say, like when I was working in the customer service industry, when I was at the bowling alley, it's like I would work an 8-hour, 10-hour shift, whatever it was, and go home and be like, oh my God, I need to just not do anything. And that's the part that's so frustrating. It's the same thing when you get up and go to a 9 to 5.
Yep.
You're spending all that time at work and putting that face on at work, and you might be super productive at work, but how's your home life? What are you doing at home? You know, like I know me, and after I was done with a shift like that, or when I was in the office and I would go home and be like, this is my chill time. Nobody bother me. I'm not doing anything. And what's ironic is at the same time I was in that industry or in the office, I'm like, people that work from home, like I always thought that if you worked from home, like it was just an excuse to be lazy. Like I always would think like if I worked from home, I would never do anything. I'd be relaxing, watching movies all the time or watching TV.
I used to think that.
Doing whatever until I actually worked from home, and it was like I could do most of my productive stuff during the day, whether it's like take 5 minutes to like switch over laundry or take 5 minutes to clean a certain room of the house and keep it maintained. Like my house here has never been like my apartment used to get dirty all the time because I would be so lazy I wouldn't want to do anything. My house here, since I work from home, is like there's like dishes sometimes out. Sure. You know, like I'm not really stressed about doing a deep cleaning that often because it stays pretty well clean during the day while we're like doing stuff. Right. So, and doing that during the day while I'm here, while working and getting my stuff done for work, it's like I can take my night and actually enjoy it with my family. You know, we can sit down and talk to each other about our days. We can sit down at the dinner table and have those conversations, or we could go out and do something. You know, it's not like I'm like, oh shoot, I have to get this done because I didn't do it, you know?
Right.
There's just that time during the day, and I'm so much more productive during the day working from home.
I can tell you that historically, I would have to work late nights and early mornings to get certain tasks done because I needed that time without interruption.
Yeah.
And I hate saying it because there's been so many coworkers in my entire career that I absolutely love, but it became a distraction. Like and again, it was developing leadership skills over a certain amount of time, you know, too.
Right.
Earlier in my career, it's like, oh, sure, I was super responsive. It was just trying to make people happy. So like dropping everything that you're doing to basically wait on your coworkers for 8 hours. And then I needed 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening just to get work. I was probably only productive for about 5 hours a day.
Right.
Because the rest of it's like I would get up at 4 a.m. in order to get up, get ready to be at the office by 6:30, just to have an hour and a half of uninterrupted time to get certain things done where I couldn't be interrupted, and then stay until 6 or 7 at night to get other things done. And then in the middle of the day, yeah, sure, it was busy work. And then you have people who are throwing things at you all of the time, blowing up your phone with text messages, not respecting the work that you have to do. And some people, they do it because they need things and not realizing it's disrespectful.
Right.
But that's that whole thing of you can have the team interaction, you can have the team camaraderie without having, you know, like a 30-minute chit chat fest by the coffee machine in the morning at an office, because that's what happens. And you hate sounding like a dick where it's like, oh, well, you don't want your employees to get along and have that bonding time. Well, no.
There's a time and a place. There is a time and a place for it. What I was going to say is that those times were like, and there's times where you need to like step away from your computer to like gain your mental focus back. And I can tell you in the office, what I would do if I needed to step out of my office and just like clear my mind to be able to jump back into something, if I'm, you know, dealing with some sort of like block, whatever you want to call it, I would go down the hallway and fuck off in somebody else's office and just be like, what's up? What are you guys up to? You know? And now working from home, it's like if I need that, I'll go do something productive to my house, like clean a room or do the laundry or like prep dinner or something, you know, something that's much more productive to my day to day.
Yeah. And again, so that whole chit chat fest, then like turns into an hour. You know, you're the person sitting in someone's office chit chatting while they're doing work, or vice versa. And I think about the having to work a traditional 8-hour day, just everything that's entailed in that. Yeah. I would have to spend 6 hours on a Sunday prepping my week, prepping my child care, you know, when the kids were younger, or accounting for, just a couple years ago, Miles couldn't drive, like a year actually. Right. So accounting for soccer practice, who's getting him to soccer practice. So, I mean, and then meal prepping, you know, so you're not eating out every single day while you're at the office, because that's costing you money. And the commute for me with traffic was easily almost an hour to and from the office the whole time I worked in St. Louis. So it, regardless of the company, like, I mean, there would be days you could fly and get there in like 35 minutes, but that was also the days I was getting there at 6:30 or 7 in the morning. And so it was just
because you're carving out that much more of your time at home,
right,
to get stuff done at home to make it to work.
Yeah. And the amount of stress that you're under is insane. Even
also being in leadership and like prefacing to be at the office on time.
Right.
And it's difficult. The only time that you could be on time is when you leave your house at the ass crack of dawn, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is just all around exhausting.
Which in reality, I only had to be there to then like basically babysit other people just to make sure. Because at the end of the day, like if they were getting their, honestly, I was legit of the mindset because I had the ability to track my team and say, are you either getting your work done or you're not? And I could clearly see it in the software. I don't need to ask you. I don't need to micromanage you, but I have to be there an hour early and I have to leave late just to make sure everyone's showing up on time and everyone's leaving on time. And that's not leadership, that's babysitting.
Right.
And
that's micromanaging somebody else.
Right. So I don't like that environment. I don't like that environment. I don't like that vibe. I don't like that. And it has nothing to do, like there's a high level of accountability in what we're doing right now. And none of it has to do with when you turn on your computer and when you don't. And so
it's just if you communicate effectively, you don't have to micromanage because you see it in the results.
Right.
Going, I know I asked you to do this at this day and it's done by this time. Great. Like, what do I need to get on you about?
Yeah, that's so anyway, but like that work life home balance.
Work life, home life balance.
Work life balance. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
Work balance.
Homework. Oh, now see
life. I don't know what to do with my hands.
But it was not only us, it was, it's everybody on your team. So they're stressed out because they were doing the same things I was, like having to, there were plenty of us that didn't have stay-at-home spouses to not like where you didn't have to worry about, cleaning the house, maintaining this, getting the kids here and there. And I had a little bit of that. I mean, Justin actually did a little bit of that. His schedule doesn't really allow for that anymore, but where he was like, hey, if it's at home, you have to take care of it. And that's not fair to him. That's not fair to our relationship, where it was just like, I didn't think of the things at home. I went to work and I came home and that's just what I did. But if you think how much more productive you could be you could do half the preparation, more effective preparation for your week, less driving, less expenses, less fuel. It was 35 miles each way when I was driving into St. Louis.
Yeah, and that takes a toll on the gas tank.
Right, the gas tank,
What's so
and mileage
crazy
on
is
the vehicles.
It's strange for me to fill up my car now. Like,
no,
and it's even more strange now that Crew's not in school. The only time I was really leaving the house in my car to do a decent trip, like, minus the grocery store and all that, but that's like once a week. It was going to take Crew to school, and there were so many times throughout the school year where I was like, shit, I didn't fill up my gas tank and we're running late because I never leave. Why would I?
Right.
Like, it makes it that much easier to go, I'll just get it in the morning. And that's the worst mistake you could do with your gas. It's like, I'll just get it in the morning, because it never works out that way and you always forget about it.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Like the amount of miles that I've put on my truck now are like next to none.
Yeah.
Even taking a trip here and there, it's like, oh, I still only have 30-something thousand miles on this car. It's been sitting there for a while.
I got my car 10 months ago. Guess how many miles I've put on it? Not even. It's more like 9.5.
And it was brand new?
Brand new. I think it had like maybe 15 miles on it.
You had to drive down. Like, is it under 10,000?
Yeah. It's 6,000.
Oh my God. That's great.
That's it.
Yeah. See, the first 29,000 miles that I put on my truck was solely for commuting. And that was less than a year.
That's crazy.
Less than a year.
When I was driving to the bowling alley, because it was like a 30-minute drive when I was in St. Charles still.
Right.
I want to say, I got my car before the one I have now at 64,000 miles, and I traded it in at 120. And that was like a majority of that. That was 3.5 years. I put that on there, I think.
Right.
So roughly doubled it, but that was solely going to the bowling alley. That's a lot of miles too. Down 270. Ugh, worse.
I was telling Justin the other day, just since, because he does go out and coach classes during the day.
Right.
Usually there's 3 days a week. I think he's home at lunchtime.
Mm-hmm.
1 day a week he's home by 1, even in the middle of soccer league. So if I come here to the studio and work, again, I can leave whenever I want.
Mm-hmm.
I have a full office at home, fully productive. And I do intentionally start my day at home first thing in the morning on Thursdays and Fridays. Like I work 100% at home on Thursday and Friday. The studio, it's kind of hit and miss. So I think it just kind of keeps me productive. It keeps me moving. I'm 10 minutes from my house though.
Right.
So, it's a huge difference. And I can work as early or as late. Kind of, it's basically the equivalent of working remote or working from home. But I told him, like, I've seen him more. I've seen him and spent time with him more in the last, how long has it been? 10 months?
Yeah.
Almost, coming up on a year. It's 10 months.
No, it's been like 8 for you.
Oh yeah, is it 8?
Because a year, 12 months is...
It's basically as of October 1st.
Yeah.
November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June. So yeah, it'll be 8 months.
Yeah.
I've seen him more in the last 8 months, like spending time on a daily basis, than I probably had in the last 5 years.
Yeah. Well, what do you guys do? Since you're both running businesses, what do you guys do as a couple in a household that cohabitate? Sure. What does your prep look like
for the week?
Yeah. You guys, there's something that this is what I want to lead into, is like ideas that Cole and I are coming up with, because we both work from home, and how we want to handle that going forward, especially since we're now at this place of putting our income into something else, investing in something together. But go ahead. Sorry. What do you guys do as a couple? Do you guys like get together, or do you guys do your separate thing but just kind of communicate it?
Are you talking about like just running the household?
Running a household plus your work. Like, what do you guys both are working, you know?
We pretty much have the same schedule from week to week. Like, he'll ask me still occasionally, are you going into the office today, or are you working from home? Mm-hmm. And I've told him, I'm like, well, no, I've created a habit where I work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I know when he has, like, summer league starts this week.
Right.
So tonight he won't come home. He'll have actual soccer practice. He won't get home till like 8:00 or so. So I have to make some adjustments as far as meal plans go, but we will make sure that we have lunch accounted for. Like, I'll make sure that he's taken care of from a food standpoint. And then now, like, I'm not really going to cook anything. Like, I'll prep a couple meals on the weekends. But as far as like what we do around the house, like, there's certain things now, like we pay someone to cut our grass. We do laundry specific days. We clean the house on the weekends. And if I could find somebody, like, I've had trouble finding somebody, but I want to hire a housekeeper. So that way, that's just like one less thing that we have to worry about, and we can actually spend more like quality time together. And then the thing that we do, like, we have a pretty consistent morning routine, like as far as getting to see one another, have breakfast together or have coffee together in the morning. And the only wild card is now, like, our son is going to be a senior. He's now on summer break. And I opened his door at like 5 a.m, and I'm like, hey man, did you go to sleep last night? He's like, no, I'm pretty tired, but I can't fall asleep. Like, he stayed up all night playing games on his computer, and I could hear him, like, he was trying to go to sleep and he just couldn't. And so he's going to be the one wild card of like, hey man, you can't do that on nights that, you have soccer practice the next day.
Right.
But that's the thing. I see Miles more than, it's sad. I mean, I worked so much that I couldn't tell you any of his teachers' names in elementary school, because I was working so much. I couldn't tell you, maybe two out of his 5 teachers at elementary school, I could probably tell you their names.
I could remember all my teachers from kindergarten through 8th grade because I was at a Catholic school.
Yeah. Like, I remember my teachers, but like, I don't remember my kids' teachers because I never... Like, I was not the one who, like, you communicate via email. Like, unless, and we didn't do parent-teacher conferences unless he was getting a bad grade in something. So, I mean, I hate saying we weren't involved parents, but when you work for someone else, it prevents you from getting and business, and this is the hypocrisy. Like, if you are going to be a business owner and you are going to say things like, well, if you just set boundaries and, you could do these things, it's like, then help them create that.
Right.
Don't be the person of, I leave every day at 3:00 because I'm going to go pick my kids up from school while your entire staff is in the office and is, on the verge of missing, a basketball game or something like that.
Right.
Or you give them shit for it. And that's not okay. Like, if you're a business owner, sure. Yeah. You can create more freedom for yourself because you are employing other people, but then don't preach to the rest of the team that they have control of their boundaries in their life when you mandate when they have to show up to an office.
Well, what sucks is mandating when they have to show up to an office and then getting upset with them when they don't respond to you after office hours.
Right.
Like, I get paid, like, and I hate being that person because there's some things that, like, as an employee, you have to go above and beyond on, especially if you're working for somebody and you believe in the vision of the company.
Right.
But having that mandate and stressing that and micromanaging that, and then trying to not communicating with your employees while they're at the office working.
When they need something from you.
When they need something, and then communicating with them at 7:00 at night and not being happy when they don't respond.
Yeah, like they're not giving their all.
You have to understand is you have them for this allotted time.
Yeah.
It's valid for employees these days to go, this is my boundary. You have me from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. at this office to do whatever you need me to do work related. Unless it's something like going out of town or like you're running late on a deadline and you need to like work extra, right? That's you as an employee, and that's something that's internal. But as an employer, you can't expect your employees to be thrilled with you. And that's why I've always, as an employer, I've always communicated, like, if I have to communicate with my employees outside of office hours,
right,
it's like, hey, I'm sending this now before I forget. You don't have to do anything about it right now, but put this on your radar. You know, like, here's a mental note, but don't worry about it right now. I just needed to get it off my head. Not going, I need you to send me this right now. Yeah.
And you're very conscious of it, where don't, like, the 100 questions that you're getting asked at 7:00 at night, why weren't you sending, like, why wasn't I receiving those questions between the hours of 8 and 5? And trust me, I've put in way more hours for several people that I've worked for. So I'm not even, like, I used to be that person that's like, why don't you respond? Like, why don't you come in early? Why don't you stay up late? Until I realized how unhealthy that is.
Right. It's hard for employee retention too, because your employees are going to be sick of you because not everybody that's an employee is going to act like me, is what I have to put that mindset in, is like, in the office, if I expect you to be here at this time, but I expect you to respond to me at the, after office hours, like, I can't expect that you're doing nothing like I would do if I was not at the office going, this is my time away from the office. I'm going to sit here and do nothing,
Yeah. And trust me, the level that you become addicted to your phone when it's, I look back at it now and it's like, it's almost like mental abuse. You become so fearful of not responding and the consequences of not responding that you don't know how to shut off the hyper responsiveness.
Right.
So then you have somebody who's like lecturing you on being hyper responsive. And I'm like, bitch, you caused this behavior. Like, what?
Yeah.
And it's fine to not hyper respond. And
it's also the people that have a problem with you not responding are the people that don't respond to you when you need them.
Yep. Yeah. It's like the typical double standard. So, like, it's a pattern of honestly, it's a pattern of like narcissistic behavior. And having like a narcissistic leader is probably one of the most it's probably the most toxic like environment that you can be in, which prevents you from having that, that balance at home. So, and I've seen a lot of, like, we have a lot of companies in the roofing industry, and obviously you can't put on a roof remote. But you do realize, though, when your installers are not on a roof, they're not on the clock. Like, they're doing something else, or they're working for someone else as well.
Right.
Your employees, I'm seeing a lot of companies make that shift where, you can have and it really just depends on what you want. But if you want to struggle or continue to struggle with your recruiting, hiring, and your employee retention, keep doing what you're doing then, I guess. But I've seen so many companies, they're very open-minded to a hybrid schedule, to a remote, to not having a permanent office that you have to spend, you know, $5,000-$6,000 a month in rent. Like it's becoming like there's so many things about if you really think about the work-life balance of your employees and what you would want for yourself and what you would want for your team, how much more productive people can be and how much it can actually save your budget and reduce your overhead. So instead of always looking at the people as a way to reduce overhead, look at the bullshit that you're paying every month that you don't need.
Right. I mean, and this is not to toot our own horn, but I feel like consistently researching and testing things that are going to make us more efficient.
Right.
Whether that's we're paying an employee for something that we could do ourselves, or it's going, we just have too much of a workload. We need to maybe cut back on this and hire somebody else, you know?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, when you're working in especially if you're working in a creative space like this, like we have plenty of tools to collaborate. We have plenty of tools to automate. You could do this type of work from pretty much anywhere that you have an internet connection. So I look at things I look at things now more for their value and output of the actual work and the quality of the actual work than whether or not you're on the clock.
Right.
You know, like if you start your day later, that's fine. We have scheduled meetings that reoccur every week. So we work around that. So we show up to the meetings when they're scheduled. And now, like you said, we have that flexibility of testing other methods. Like how much can we batch? How much can we, and you know, can we work together on a project so that way we can test it and see, is it getting us the results that we're wanting? Is it saving us the time that we're looking at? Are we teaching each other new techniques?
Right.
So it can, and it just creates that space, more of that space at home. I would say I don't feel the stress that I had from my phone blowing up from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. constantly by multiple people was a high level of stress. Prepping for the week and trying to make sure all the bases were covered as far as just the stuff that should be way less stressful. Like dinner. Like if I had to pick up an ingredient on the way home that I forgot to make dinner, I was so stressed out and I would be like, fuck it, let's just go to a restaurant. Like I don't want to stop and add another 30 minutes to my night when I'm just trying to get home and make dinner.
Right.
And you know, and it sucks when you leave, let's say you leave later than planned. Let's say it's an 8 to 5 or a 9 to 5 kind of environment. Let's say you leave at 5:30 or 6. You're going to get stuck in worse traffic than what you anticipated.
Right.
Then you get somewhere close to home. Now you're maybe starting dinner at I literally was just come in the door and start cooking.
Yeah.
Because in order to make dinner, so you're not eating at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, you had to do it right away. And by the time you do that and you clean and you're like, fuck, I have 30 minutes before I really need to go to bed because it all starts again tomorrow at 5.
Right.
And there's no enjoyment of just spending time with your family or doing something that's not I don't want to get in the habit of sitting and watching TV at night because it's the only thing I have time to do. You know, there's other honestly, there's one show we watch a week. So just keeping it like that to where we actually can do something else. You know, that's outside of outside of maybe having 30 minutes of free time. And it sucks that I didn't have that when I stressed out way more about that when my kids were younger. And I don't get that time back. And I gave that time to somebody else. That time that was way more valuable than what I was getting paid. And
that's something that I think Cole and I have also appreciated is the fact that, you know, his move to Houston, because he's from Dallas, his move to Houston was for his son. My move from St. Louis to here in Houston is not only for Cole, it's for myself, but also for crew. Right. I'm in the same, vision of this family. And that's something that we talked about from the beginning. You can call it manifestation, whatever you want to call it. Is both we are going to live this life. We are both going to work from home. We're going to be able to be here for crew. We're going to be able to live the life that we want, travel and still be able to work. And I've never traveled more in my life than I have within the last 12 months.
Right.
So.
And that was one thing that was like a non-negotiable going forward, because it was something that I wanted for myself, and there was no way in the confines of where I was before that I would have been able to create that without just saying, I'm going to do something else.
Right.
This isn't working for me. This is not aligning with what I want. This is not aligning with who I am. This is not aligning with the lifestyle that I want to create. If you think that in the next 5 years, like, I mean, I don't look as old as what I am, but I'm probably 5 years off from having a grandkid. You know, my kids are older. If you think I'm going to be like a 40-hour a week working in an office grandparent, nope, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I want. And so the only way to really create the lifestyle like you talked about is to create something new. And that's just what we did. And, you know, the awesome thing is, if you know, we have people who reach out to us that want to be a part of it. And sometimes the timing is right and sometimes it's not. You know, it's still a relatively young company if you think about, I mean, it's really young.
Only since February. It's been 4 months.
Yeah. So it's not even been a ridiculously a long amount of time. It's just, we have people now that see what we do and they want to be a part of it. And we've been able to bring a couple people on to be a part of it, or sometimes in a freelance capacity. But even on the full-time, like the stuff that we have on our website, like there's a few things that aren't quite in place yet, but that's the direction it's going. So when we've talked about, I want the same thing. Like if I say that it's something I want for myself, it's something that I want to be able to give the option to somebody else. I don't care if I'm the owner of the company or not, because I lead by example.
Right. So that's what I feel like we've done with Allie, you know, like Allie, here's this opportunity. Like this is how we want it to be. Like, do not feel guilty. And that's the thing with the last or previous jobs that I've had, is that guilt of like being able to take the time for yourself. And we've gone into podcasts about that. We've discussed this before, but being able to provide that for somebody going, this is exactly how we want to run it, and them understanding it and not having that, like the secrets behind it.
Yeah.
And you have 10 days PTO, but since you've only started in April, you only get 4 days. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't make, I get it, but it doesn't.
Yeah. Right. I mean, help. It's unlimited PTO. Like in the grand scheme of things, it's unlimited PTO because you're doing these tasks in exchange for what we're paying you per year. And if you can get them, and that's the thing is, I know that when Allie says, hey, I'm leaving to go to a weekend road trip, but I'm leaving on Thursday, I don't think for a minute on whether or not she has her work done. Like,
no, I know. So it's having the trust in your employee.
Yeah, I don't doubt that at all. Like, I don't have to ask her. Like, I ask her, like, hey, how are things going? Like, as far as, there anything you need help with? But
yeah, I think the only thing I've ever asked is if anybody is like, I can't make it to this, or I'm going out of town. Okay, do you need help getting anything out? No? Right. Okay, great. And it's not because I'm like, did you get your work done? It's going,
right. No, it's, do you need help?
Sometimes to get everything tied up, you know, I'm going out of town next week. I need to make sure everything's tied up for all of the tasks that I do during the day.
Yep. And we have that flexibility. So if you can handle 6 client accounts and you can get it done in 25 or 30 hours a week, that's because of your level of productivity. I don't expect you to be chained to the computer. So if you say, hey, I'm going to go out of town Thursday and Friday, great. If we have questions, are you available? Well, I'm available. I'll be available Friday, not Thursday, because Thursday I'm traveling. Okay, cool. And I don't think any of us have that anxiety of telling one another that stuff.
No, I think the only time you've had anxiety is when you were coming to surprise me. And I was like, hey, you want to hop on a Zoom? You're like, yeah, sure. I'm on client calls as you're driving. And then you didn't say anything. So I was like, did you forget about me? And you're like, yes, no.
I had straight up anxiety because I was flat out lying to you.
I know.
In order to create a surprise.
It was okay. It was a good lie.
Right. Yeah, I know. But still, you have anxiety about it when you're not being honest. So just a little bit of insight. I think one thing, if you're a business owner, it's great if you're in a startup position, but I would encourage most business owners to, like, if you are wanting to get to a place where you can go do whatever you want whenever you want, you have employees and to do that, but take into consideration, like, do you need the building? Do you need to have somebody within the 4 walls in order to produce whatever you're producing? Like, having that healthy balance, not only for yourself, but for your team, is what makes the business, like, overall very, very productive.
Right.
And profitable.
Right. And I mean, having this, although we're talking to entrepreneurs as our audience, you still have a significant other, or most cases have a significant other. If you don't, we're not judging you or discriminating against you. But having that same type of organization, somewhat, obviously not as like tight knit, but having that organization at home with your significant other, whether they work with you or not, is very detrimental to the way your work life and home life balance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a significant other. I mean, just having a social life out,
right,
which is hard enough. You know, it's hard enough as an adult. Like once you're out of college, you're not near as in tune with just even friends. So
yeah, well, no, it's like my friends are all on my phone. Yeah, friends here. But I also, it was even when I was in St. Louis, I wasn't like Katie. I think we only hung out a couple times outside of work.
Yeah, like once. Oh no, twice. No, it was more than that.
It was more than that, but it was just like
you came to my house once, but then we did hang out, you know, but it's still
we would hang out at work though, like after work.
Yeah. I mean, but that's that whole thing that's tough, you know. If you don't, if your schedule is just crammed, like you got to have, and that I guess that's why coworkers become friends, because those are the only
they have that time. They're with each other all the time. You might as well enjoy the people that you work with.
Yeah, you need to enjoy the people that you work with, but like there's again, it's kind of that double-edged sword with productivity. Like you could actually let people work remote and have way more productivity because they, you know, they're more effective in the time that they are working. If they can get more done in 6 hours working remote, who cares? Like do that versus making them work 8 hours and only get 4 or 5 hours of work done.
Right.
And I think the beauty of that too is like we talked about, sometimes you're not like, there are days that I'm not as effective early in the morning. So, or I'm not effective in the afternoon. So you can break your day up. You do like 3 solid hours of really productive work, take a 2-3 hour break, do 2 or 3 more hours of really productive work. And then if you are working at 9 o'clock at night, it's your choice. It's when you're engaged, you know?
Right.
Some tips for you. How can they find us? And
if you need advice, if you need a friend to talk to, if you want to hear our opinion on a topic, you can reach out to us at our Instagram, which is at F__K your pod. On Instagram, or you can email me at Emma@99creatives and Katy at
99 creatives.
Moral of the story today: you can create balance. I hate how that's a myth. You can create balance. It just depends on your level of organization and seeing what you want done for the week and how you could squeeze it in the time that you have available. Whether that's working late one night, whether that's cleaning your house for the entire week all in one day and just maintaining, whether that's, I don't know, not doing nothing. Just know that you can do the damn thing.
Adios.